Вітання усім. Перед початком нашої роботи я попрошу нашу
So
технічну.
good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Before we start our work, we would like to ask our technical support to provide an announcement for you. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. We would like to remind you about the simultaneous interpretation that you have. Please make sure that you note down the globe-like icon that says interpretation. Please make sure that you're choosing the proper channel. If you would like to speak or listen to English, please choose English channel.
You about simultaneous interpretation, please pay attention that there is an icon of globe interpretation at the bottom panel. Please choose English. Thank you very much for your attention. Дякую за увагу.
Щиро дякую.
Thank you very much. So dear panelists, dear participants, dear partners and dear friends, we are pleased to welcome you at our today's webinars for the Sustainable Development Goals in Ukraine, the subnational level, that has been organized by the State Statistical Service of Ukraine in partnership with the UNDP and VoxUkraine. This event is being held in the framework of the project of the UNDP, the Civil Society for the Development of Democracy and Human Rights in Ukraine, that have been implemented with the financial support of the Ministries of Foreign Affairs of Kingdom of Denmark. The successful implementation of the agenda of the Sustainable Development Goals up till 2030 presupposes reaching of all of the 17 SDGs on the global, national, and subnational level. The national and subnational levels have been mentioned at our last year's session of the Statistical Commission of the UN, when the Statistics Committee of the UN has once again announced that the using of the systems of the global indicators is voluntary and is a free choice of every single country, depending on the specifics of the country's needs and realities, and thus we can choose alternative indicators for monitoring and controlling of their implementation on both national and subnational levels. When we have analyzed the methodologies to analyze the SDGs reaching, we have decided to choose the additional indicators for Asia and the South Pacific region, because this methodology provides us the opportunity to show the progress that the country has made starting from the very beginning year as the share of the overall progress that has to be done, and gives us the opportunity to calculate what is the overall distance that has to be reached in order to reach all of the SDGs based on the progress of every single country for the previous year. In 2020, we have already had the successful pilot project that has been implemented in partnership with the State Statistical Service of Ukraine together with UNDP and VoxUkraine on evaluating the SDGs levels. So today we're going to also see the results of the research and the representation of the indicators of the SDG implementations based on the global and subnational levels. We will know what is the overall role of the SDGs in the implementation of the state and regional policies. We will learn what are the best practices and the main indicators for the development of the SDG implementation indicators on the subnational level from the representatives of the UNDP, and we'll have a case study from the UK on how the SDGs are being monitored on the subnational level in the United Kingdom. And we will also learn about the results that have already been used by the UNDP with the help of our partners. So I would like to pass the floor to the head of the State Statistical Service, Ihor Verner. Thank you very much. And I would like to first of all welcome everyone. Would like to wish all of us to have a very good and productive day. And first of all, I would like to thank our partners. Ms. Dafina Gercheva, the UNDP representative to Ukraine, and This is the project that has a very good strategic partner and a very good friend of Ukrainian statistics. And it gives us the opportunity to do a lot of new things, and it really helps us to keep on moving further on in our development, not only in monitoring the SDGs, but overall in our statistics work. And I really would like to thank the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Denmark that given us the opportunity to provide this project with their financial support we exist, and our partner, the VoxUkraine NGO, for their great work that they have been doing in supporting and in development of the collaboration with the State Statistics Service, especially in monitoring the SDGs implementation. I would like to emphasize that our event today is very important. In Ukraine, there is a huge attention from the government that has been dedicated, and a lot of attention both by the government and the president of Ukraine has been dedicated to monitoring the implementations of the SDGs. And we had a decree by the Cabinet of Ministries, the 626R, that identifies the KPIs for identifying whether we're implementing the SDGs is a real step that has been already taken. Last autumn, the State Statistics Service has represented on its page, once again, with the help of the collaboration with the UNDP and with VoxUkraine, we have presented the adapted methodology for the UNECE Cup that gives us the opportunity to evaluate the progress on each of the SDGs that have been identified with the KPIs. I would like to invite you to join us in monitoring on how are we implementing the SDGs. You can take a look at this at the page of the State Statistics Service. There is a specific dedicated chapter. There is a dedicated chapter on monitoring, and you can interactively see each goal, each indicator that have the specific goal identified. You can monitor the progress. But our today's event has even more significance for us because all of the panelists today, all of the people who are going to be participating today, they will give us the new dimension to the work that has been now discussed in Ukraine. Monitoring of the SDGs on the sub-national level. That is a very important event. For example, the State Statistics Service of Ukraine, we are gathering information and monitoring the SDGs only on the 20 indicators, available for us. And today's panelists, today's speakers are going to show their vision and share their vision and their work that they have already done in order to maybe broaden our scale, giving us the opportunity to evaluate the reach and the implementations of the SDGs on the subnational level from a different point of view. And it's very important for us to see the development of other experience. And I'm really grateful for our speakers from the UK today, Ms. Joanne Evans, because we'll be able to study the experience of the UK about the monitoring of the SDGs on the subnational level. It is always very important for us to know how different countries do that. We're going to have another important presentation as well by Tetyana Tyshchuk, who's going to present us the UNECE Cup methodology that has been adapted to the subnational level. And we're really looking forward to the Svetlana Kovalevska presentation when they're going to present their vision of how we can monitor the SDGs on the regional level. And of course, we're looking forward to the presentations by other panelists as well, because we really want to know and how we can provide the full scope of the monitoring indicators for the SDGs being implemented. Having that said, I would like to wish all of us the very productive and fruitful discussion, and we do hope that we're going to have a very interesting presentations overall. And I'm really grateful to all of our colleagues and all of our guests and partners, and I'm really grateful to everyone who has joined this presentation today, who really cares about the SDGs on the subnational level as well. Thank you. Thank you, Ihor. Thank you, Ihor. And I also have the honor to invite Ms. Dafina Gercheva, the resident representative of the UNDP to Ukraine. And since we have signed the memorandum of the understanding between the State Statistics Service and the UNDP, we have already reached a lot in this productive partnership. And I do believe there have been some really fundamental initiatives that have been launched in this partnership in order to support the European movement of the Ukrainian Statistics Services and helping the State Statistics Service to become a more useful services for Ukrainian society. We're currently starting another initiative on the development of the open platform for the SDGs. So I am really pleased and honored to welcome Ms. Dafina Gercheva. Please.
Dear Verner, thank you so much. Dear colleagues, distinguished participants, it is indeed a great honor to welcome you to today's discussion on measuring and monitoring the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals at the subnational level in Ukraine. As it has already been mentioned, this event is jointly organized by the United Nations Development Programme, State Statistics Service of Ukraine, Ministry of Economic Development and Trade, and VoxUkraine. The meeting could not be timelier, coming as it does in the second year of UN Decade of Action and at a time when we are emerging from the worst pandemic in generations. At the launch of the Decade of Development, the United Nations Secretary General called on all sectors of society to mobilize for action on three levels. Global action to secure greater leadership, more resources, and smarter solutions for the accelerated achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Local action to embed the needed transitions in policies, strategies, action plans, and budgets. And people action to meaningfully engage all stakeholders in supporting social transformation and the advancement of 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. There is, colleagues, a growing recognition that achieving the 17 global goals is everybody's responsibility and must be taken into account across all sectors and at all levels. The United Nations Development Programme therefore feels privileged to gather today such a diverse representation of stakeholders, including from government, civil society, academia, but also top-notch experts from other European countries who will share their experience in measuring sustainable development goals on a subnational level. Ukraine's pledge to achieve the SDGs is indeed commendable. In September 2019, President Zelensky issued a decree on Ukraine's sustainable development goals until 2030, which gave a new impetus to country's strong commitment to rally behind the SDGs as a way towards prosperity, resilience, and peace. To facilitate the integration of the SDGs into national policies and strategies, the government of Ukraine has developed national SDG monitoring system consisting of 86 national targets with 183 indicators. It also has established an interagency working group on SDGs that has already produced 162 governmental regulatory legal acts with 4,300 planned actions. In the years before COVID-19 pandemic, Ukraine was moving in the right direction and rapidly building momentum. Its 2020 Comprehensive Voluntary National Review Report documented progress on 15 of 17 SDGs, highlighting higher national assessment capacity and also increased public awareness of the global goals. We believe that our meeting today will further contribute to accelerating the achievement of the global goals and building forward better and greener. Dear participants, dear colleagues, I'm looking forward to the presentations and follow-up discussions, as well as to continuing the collaboration with you on this extremely important journey. In closing, I would like to express my gratitude and appreciation to the State Statistics Service of Ukraine and to its director, and to VoxUkraine for their commitment, cooperation, and collaboration in this very important endeavor. I would also like to extend special thanks and appreciation to the government of Denmark for its generous support to UNDP project Civil Society for Enhanced Democracy and Human Rights in Ukraine, under the framework of which this event is organized. I thank you.
Щиро дякую, Ваше Високоповажність.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you very much. So let us now get closer to the goal that has gathered us all together here, and let us now switch to the presentation of the methodology and the results of the pilot study for the SDGs progress assessment in Ukraine at subnational level based on UNECE methodology. And having that said, I would like to pass the floor for the presentation of the work that has been concluded. Please welcome Ms. Tetyana Tyshchuk, who is the leader of the Reform Index project at VoxUkraine, and who has successfully and responsibly has been holding all of the works in the framework of our partnership. Thank you very much, Tetyana. Please, the floor is yours. Can you hear me? Yes, good day. So, dear colleagues, I'm pleased to welcome everyone. I'm pleased to welcome everyone. I'm pleased to see everyone today. We have a lot of people joining us right now. I do hope it's going to be a very productive work. To all of the gratitude that has been already voiced out, I would like to express additional gratitude for our UNESCAP colleagues who have always provided their support and help to us, who always helped us to get a clearer understanding of how their methodology works, to get clearer of what kind of insights we might receive when we're going to be using it for monitoring overall SDGs progresses that always give us additional answers to all of the questions and give us additional advice. As I've already has said, and from what I already have said, I think that some of the people have already had the opportunity to trace how this methodology works when we tried to use it for the overall national level, or when we not tried, but we've used it for the national level, or for example, when we used it for monitoring the Sustainable Goals development progress in the healthcare for Ukraine. But now I see we have some new participants here as well that has joined us in this conversation. So I would like to start with an overall brief review of this methodology. So you would be so there will be a clear understanding of what this methodology brings us with, what are the calculations that are giving us the opportunity to evaluate with this methodology. So if you would like to use this methodology to evaluate the level of work on your local levels for your local governments, it would be much easier for you to understand how you should start this work, or maybe you'll be able even to implement it on your own. So there is the huge benefit of this methodology, and the huge benefit of this methodology is, first of all, that this methodology does not give you the opportunity only to take a look of what are the basic figures behind the indicators and to juxtapose it together with a goal, but it gives us the opportunity to track the progress that we have made in order to reach the goal. This methodology also gives us the opportunity to track this progress in numbers, in figures, and what is also very important, that this methodology gives us the opportunity, out of this 183 indicators that we have identified on the national level, or we understand that will be fewer indicators on the subnational level, so on the regional level, but it gives us the opportunity to get this 183 indicators to more aggregated indicators, to 17 indicators that are available for every goal. And then it gives us the opportunity to track our efforts and to identify those bottlenecks that might have postponed the progress. Just give me a second. I'll just make the next slide of the presentation. From the very beginning, I would like to say, first of all, what this progress indicator might look like, and then I will get back to methodology and all of the calculations towards that. The progress might be traced with the help of the interval from -10 to +10. 10 If, for example, a certain indicator equals 10, it means that the progress that we have made from the basic, from the referent period to the current period is insufficient yet for us to reach the goal. If the indicators equals 10, then it means that the progress is relevant or even faster. So for example, if we're going to keep on moving with this same tempo, we're going to either reach the goals or even make it better. If this indicator is in the interval from 0 to +10, it means that a certain progress is in place. But if we will keep on moving in the same pace further on, then it means that we will be late on reaching our goals. We will not be able to reach our goal in time. And you can see at this slide, then there is the examples of the situation when the indicators might be as well located from interval from 0 to 10. You see this is the first line. And there are two options that's available. First of all, when our indicator is higher, the better, the higher the better. For example, we have the overall, like, for example, vegetable consumption level. And theoretically, the more people consume vegetables, the better it is for their health. Thus, if we are moving into the right direction, but the overall volume of the consumption of vegetables is not sufficient, and we can see that, for example, based on the trend that we can see, will not reach the levels of the needed in 2030, then our indicators will be shaped as the left column, the first line in the left column. On the other hand, there are some indicators that are the worse, the better. For example, this is the indicators, for example, of the death rate, or for example, the indicators of the public health, like the less casualties, the less death cases we know down out because of some certain illnesses, the better it is for the longevity of human life. And we understand that this is the needed direction for the certain indicator. And thus we will going to be juxtaposing the result that we have calculated to the level that is needed by us. We're just going to be considering the very specific indicator. We will just understand that there are the different needed direction that we should follow. On the second line, for example, there is the situation that is outlined, the situation I've mentioned before as well, when the indicator is moving into the right direction in a fast pace, and we can see that we might reach our goals, or we can even make it better than we have identified for ourselves, and then our indicator will equal 10. Thus, the indicator will be negative when we are having the goal of moving in one direction, but we're actually moving in a different direction. So then we're going to be calculating and evaluating our progress in minus indicators, in minus figures. So then we're going to have the overall meaning of the progress from -10 to 0. How do we then calculate this indicator of progress? At this picture, you can see the green line that is showing us the dynamic of the change of our indicators, the factual change that might happen. This is just it's an example, it's just an example and illustrative picture. So basically, you will see that the 2020 has already passed, and this is basically just for us the idea. This only illustrates the idea. It's not based on the true data. So if you will take a look at that, then you will see that what is going to be important for us is to juxtapose the progress that has been reached factually. So the difference between the referent period, and we can see that we use the referent period, we use 2015 as the referent period, and the meaning, the figure of the indicator that we might reach in 2030 if we're going to be moving with the same pace that has already been taken. Then there's differences between the basic referent figure and the forecasted figure of the indicator for 2030. We correlate with this distance that we have to cover up till 2030 according to the goals identified, according to this moment on the slide. So what is the situation that we currently have? Based on most of the indicators, we haven't set out the goals for 2030, but we have identified them for 2020. So what can we do about that? So we're going to be evaluating the progress that might be reached up till 2020. If we'll keep on moving on the same pace, we're going to juxtapose it with the progress that we have identified. Why am I saying what we might reach? We're already living in 2021, and why do we calculate the progress for the forecasted progress for 2020 that has already passed? Because it is obvious that it's not just right away in the end of the year we aggregate all of the data. The State Statistics Service has to do a lot of work in order to calculate all of the data in the right way, to publish all of the data in the right way. There are some certain standards that the State Statistics Services uses and works with, and all of the terms that the statistics services are working, they correspond to the European standards, or sometimes they're even faster than the European standards. So this is the issue of the technology when the data will be available after all. So based on certain indicators that we already have the data for 2020 available, we'll take the factual figures. And if we do not have the data for 2020 yet, then we are doing the forecasted figure with assuming and presupposing that there is a dependence between the data of this indicator and the figures that we have, that the dependence is linear. So what's going to be the input data for our indicators in this case? In order to calculate the progress, first of all, we need to understand what indicator equals to. And the second thing, we need to know the goal figure for this indicator. For the national level, and at the national level, most of the indicators have already have the figural goals. On the regional level, right now, we still haven't seen the systemic approach to identifying the figural indicators. Maybe the local councils are already working on that. Maybe the regional administrations have already been considering what kind of goals they should set for the region. So I do hope that it's going to be even more interesting for them to use this methodology, considering their main figures and the points of reference. So the indicators, we have taken the indicators, the ones that are available on the regional level in the system of the monitoring for the SDG progress, the ones that have been officially published by the State Statistics Service in the system of monitoring of the SDGs. And we've also tried to collect the information from the information executives, what data they have for the regions. I'll show you later on what we've managed to collect. But at this very stage, it is important to say that for certain regions, not for all of the SDGs, we've had the data for all of the regions. So there are some information managers that have answered our claims, someone did not. And when we have provided the claims and inquiries for the regional institutions, we had received some answers from them, sometimes no. So, and unfortunately, on those indicators that we didn't have the full picture, didn't have the full scope on, we didn't manage to evaluate the progress overall. Because if, for example, we have used one region and haven't included the other region, then we would then have the aggregated figure that is not comparable. So based on that some regions haven't sent us their information on the indicators. Some of the information administrators didn't do that. So we've understood that even those regions that send us the information, we won't be able to use it in the overall pictures. The goals itself, the figural goals, are a complex issue. We have a couple of categories for the goals. The easiest one is when the goal that has been identified on the national level can be applied to every specific region. So, for example, the very same level of the meat consumption, and we can say, for example, that the overall indicator for the country is going to be just the same for every region. Maybe regions would like to clarify it for themselves, but basically the logic of building this indicator is going to be the same. We're going to be using more or less the same indicator for all. But there are some indicators and some goal figures that haven't been identified specifically for the regions that can't be used region-wise in the same way, in the same amount as on the national level. And we have a lot of that kind of goals and indicators. For example, there is the notion on, for example, the home violence claims. And even if these indicators cannot be used for the regional level as well, then we have just thought and we assume that it might be logical, for example, to scale up this indicator to also calculate it for the relative indicators and calculate it for 100,000 people of population. So that is what we've did, for example, if in case with home violence. And the third option that is presupposed by UNECE methodology is to using the level of the overall champion zones, and I'm going to show you later of how we've done it. But the main idea behind it is that we can take the indicators from all of the regions, choosing 5 champions out of it. So choosing the 5 regions with the best indicator, with the best meaning, with the best figure for these indicators, choose the average meaning for those 5 regions, and then to use this overall figure as the goal figure for us. This is a very good past. It has some certain challenge in it. It's basically that because it's always showing, because those champions, they have nowhere to go to. They already reached their basic goal. Or maybe this region have more ambitious goal to follow. So of course we understand that for the regional administration that are going to be using that, so maybe it would be very important for you to consider in what approach to use better. But in this project, in this case, we have now saw that because the methodology of the champion zones has been used by the creators when we have the data available and when it works as a basic logic, so we did it when we were able to do that. For example, the methodologies of the champion zones, we have used it for the indicators for nutrition, for example, for all of these indicators concerning the nutrition and good diets. So this is the example of how we have calculated the indicators with the methodology of the champion zones. So we didn't have the data of the consumption of fish, for example, for each region. So we have tracked out. We know that this indicator has been identified on the national level with the needed direction to increase. So we know that on the national level, it has been identified that the bigger, the more, the better. And maybe that's right now will be also a discussion question if we have vegans among us, and maybe the same thing, it might be included to the consumption of meat overall. But as far as this goal has been identified a region like that on the national level, so this is our desired direction for the movement of this indicator. So we believe the more people eat fish, the better. We are choosing the better, the best figure for each region. Then we're choosing the top 5 region with the highest level of consumption of fish. And we're finding the average meaning for that. And this is going to be the goal figure overall then. The only moment here is about the regional division for the healthy nutrition overall. So right now we don't have the indicators for the city of Kiev. So that is why we have talked to the State Statistics Service about this case of what should we use better for that. So we've used the Kiev region indicators. So they're just the same for Kiev and Kiev region. What can we do overall when, for example, we don't have a certain indicator for the certain region? What can we do about that? But we need to calculate it still. There is a second path that we can take. So, for example, we can take the similar region, similar in structure, or you can take the average indicator all over Ukraine. But as far as we already know from the other identification from Kiev and Kiev region, we know that the regions are alike. So that is why we decided it would be good for us to use the Kiev region identifications for Kiev as well, just in this indicator for to identify the consumption level of some certain products. And there is a second example that I also wanted to show you. It shows a different approach that we've used. We have used a different approach for the indicators that we'll be able to get from the absolute meaning to relative meaning. So if in absolute figures it is not will be appropriate to use them on the national level and on regional level, they will not have a lot of sense, they will make a lot of sense for us. But if we will then bring them to the relative units, to the relative figures, it will be applicable for the regions. So what did we do? We have calculated based on the number of population, we have calculated the overall dynamics of these indicators. In this case, we are talking about the domestic violence claims, domestic violence inquiries, and we have recalculated it on all of the regional levels, and we have recalculated the target goals for the national level. It was 108,000, so we have recalculated that for 100,000 population it has to be 260. So the relative meaning the relative figure would be 260 queries. And there's one thing that I wanted to mention about the target figures. Okay, maybe we'll just talk about it later. At this slide, you can see that those are all of the information and data administrators that we have addressed to provide us with the data on every certain goal and target on the regional level. Maybe that would be very important for you if you would like to continuing following the tracking the progress on goals, and maybe that if you would like to search for some certain chapters of the goals. So what we also have managed to collect overall in the monitoring systems for the SDGs progress, we now have 21 indicator, plus we have just the data administrators, and their regional department has also provided us the data with additional 63 indicators. But not all of the data we were able to receive on the full scope. For example, the data were not full for all of the regions, or for example, the data might only be covering 1 year. And when you understand the methodology already, then if we do not have the full scope of the information available for all of the needed years, it's really hard for us to identify whether the trend is going up or going down. So even when we have collected this data, we still need to work a little bit more in order to improve the systems, and we would really like to see your offers on improving the systems as well. In the case when we do not have the regional data for certain indicators, but we have the national data and we have the target for the national data, we've also included it into analysis as well and trying to follow the overall trend. So what will happen with these goals target if we're going to be using, for example, in the system for the monitoring of the regional indicators, if we're going to use the national data there? We have more detailed information for each of the goals when we've had some data available and when we've had the target goals for each of the regions. And you can see that we don't have a lot of information right now on the regional level. It don't have enough data for the monitoring of the progress of the SDGs implementation. We can track how it moves, but in order to find some certain insights for these dynamics, and in order for us to draw some certain good conclusions out of it, so we need to have the targets as well identified. And this slide shows us that maybe we need a little bit of more efforts invested from the side of the regional administration into building the systems of the goals, because all of it is going to then influence in their strategical documents as well. If we will know where are we going, if we will have a clearer understanding of where are we heading to, then we will of course use and provide the better strategic documents further on. So what else do we have in conclusions? So we made this heat map when each of the tables, each of the table parts is corresponding to the certain targets. The highest row is about Ukraine. So we can now see in what directions our targets and indicators are moving to for each of the goals in average, because this is data that aggregates all of the indicators calculated, and it's have already aggregated all of these results for every specific goal. And we can see that, for example, speaking of poverty, we are regressing. So we can see that the changes are happening not in the direction that the goal has been identified. And we can see that right now for these indicators, all of the data are the same on the regional level. It's either we do not have the needed indicators available, or if we have the indicators available, we don't have the target goals set out, or we do not have the opportunity to use the national indicators on the regional level. So we need additional efforts from the regional councils and regional administration to identify the needed target identifiers. Or for the second and the third goals, the situation is slightly better. We have more data. We have data on the regional level as well, and we can use the same goals, one of these three methodologies that I've explained before, and we can use that to calculate the goals. We can see the difference, and you can see those tables when we have differentiated evaluations. I will show you closer in, but according to SDGs 2 and 3, then we're going to have the situation that we are overall moving into the right direction, but it's not enough for all of us to reach the target goals. For each of the regions, we can build up the profit, and we can build the profile, and we can compare those profiles with the indicators on the state level overall. And we can see how close we can get to this certain goal, how close we can get to the target indicators. We can see that the best progress is on gender equality goal, and the overall peace and justice and the strong institutions in countries overall. And we can see that this is the strongest progress for us. And you can see that what are the good progress for the Vinnytsia regions. Well, you can see that on the slide. Maybe there is even a better progress, but we cannot trace it because we do not have all of the indicators and all of the targets for each of the indicators. And we can see where the differences are. We can see where Vinnytsia, for example, in nutrition and sustainable agriculture, Vinnytsia has a better indicators than the average indexes all over Ukraine, or for example, the good health as well. But in some other SDGs, the Vinnytsia region shows worse indicators than overall in Ukraine. We have shown you in this case the more detailed indicators on those goals, that we have all the data available, the data on identifiers and the data on prices on the target goals. And of course, we're definitely going to share all of this data with you. We're going to share the presentation with you as well. So right now we can already evaluate in what directions the regions are moving to. And we can already understand what are the target goals that are being reached by their regions. I would like to say that we're using three indicators. We have the national targets and we've used that. But for example, the 2.1.3 identifier, we didn't use the national target, so we just used the champion zone methodology, as I've already said. So the same thing on the, for example, the healthcare goals, and you can see that on the slide, then this is the data available for us. So both when we had the indicators and targets, and you can see that some of the indicators have been done in the national level, and some have only been available on the level of the regions, on the level of the regional councils. You can see there might be a certain situation when the full chapter of it does not have the needed opportunity to provide the needed data to provide the monitoring for the regions. So thus, most of them are going to be covering one another. But it's also very important to see what is the overall movement in them certain indicators, because in some indicators we had a very strong progress, but in some we already had seen the bad dynamics. What we need to consider is basically that the life has given us, has made us to face the very unexpected conditions as corona crisis was. So thus, if we would have been moving further on with the attempts that we've had in 2015 up to 2019, maybe the overall picture would have been better. But as far as we have faced the crisis in different sphere of our life, then a lot of those indicators that you currently see on the slide, there are in red and identify as the opposite dynamics than the one that we have outlined for ourselves in our forecasts. A couple of more examples for the profiles, for the regions that we have created. What else I wanted to outline? That, of course, we have calculated the indicators based on those indicators and targets that have been identified and that have been provided to us. And we all understand that we have just started this monitoring. And it's clear for us that the first results that we have received in 2019, in 2020, that part of those indicators are going to give us the opportunity to see some certain insights and for us to be understanding where should we keep on moving to. So partly some of those indicators will give us the understanding that we have to improve them in order to have a more structured and more consistent approach, in order to build it in a more consistent way, so that those indicators might really be turned for the policy KPIs. What else I wanted to say, what else I wanted you to consider? We have this indicator for the average number of school children in the schools per one teacher. And it wasn't clear up till this moment in Ukrainian conditions what is better, the more the better or the less the better in this indicator. Why? Because on one hand, if we're going to have fewer pupils in the class, then the teacher will be able to give more attention to each of the pupils. And we know there are some certain problems, for example, for the cities that are, for the schools that are located in big cities or in city of Kiev or in Kiev region, in Odessa, when the classes are overfilled. On the other hand, we know the other problems that are relevant for the villages, when we have 3 or 4 pupils in one classroom, when we have the schools that do not have enough pupils. And in this situation, the local government does not have the opportunity to provide the needed financial support, the needed amount of teachers even for the kids. And what is the worst thing for the children, that under these conditions, the children will not have the opportunity to socialize. How can you find yourself some friends if you're only three of you in the classroom? So how can you have the joint hobbies or any other interests if you only have three people to socialize with? So I think that this also has to be much deeper indicator than the average notion and the average figure all over Ukraine. Another notion is the overall notion of the students that enroll to the state form of education, to the daily education in universities. Given the opportunities for the school alumni, the school graduates, to give them the opportunity to study in the universities in Ukraine. But we know the problems as well for the universities, that there is not enough financial support to provide the good equipment for the university, to engage the good professionals to university work. So at the next stage, what is going to be important for us is to learn the lessons out of the results that we currently receive in order to provide the government, the local government, the central government, to provide them with better tools on building their strategical documents in the best pace. And the better the system will be made, then easier it will be for us to use it as the main toolkit for the governments to come. So basically, this I've got everything covered, almost everything before the conclusions. But what I want to add up before the conclusions to be drawn, we're all very fascinated with this methodology, and I know that we have representatives of the regional administrations. We really would like to get you to know this methodology. We're open to help you with learning how to use it. We're going to be using it at our site. We're going to be placing those maps that I have already shown you. For you, this heat maps, so you'll be able to analyze those maps as well. But just for you to understand, it's not just the case of how you can just take and use these figures overall. In order for the SDGs to become a tool for you, there's a little bit of more homework that has to be made. We need to build up the indicator systems and the goal system that will be adapted directly to your conditions, to your environment, to build up those goals. Like, first of all, to make those goals happen, to have those goals available for you, for them to be adapted to your real conditions, to pose up the realistic targets. So we are really open to any questions that you might have. If you have any desires, or if you have any need for additional consultations or training, please tell us. We're definitely going to be doing that. Thank you very much, and thank you all organizers for your attention, and really grateful to UNESCAP for their support any time of the day, and for their intellectual, methodological, and expertise support. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tetyana. Thank you, Tetyana, for this fundamental and deep and thorough presentation of the research that you have conducted. So, dear participants, I'm sure that you have managed to see that this methodology that has been developed by UNDP does not work only solely for the regions, but not only for the Asia or the Pacific regions. It can only be adapted to the national reality that has already been shown, considering the national agenda. And right now we will going to get to the next level, to the subnational level of, and at this having been said, I would like to mention our gratitudes as well. We want also to be grateful to Ms. Diane Sheyan from UNESCOT, because he managed to meet us last year, and right now we have established this collaboration, and that has been a very bright example of how all of the people getting together in order to implement these progress tracking program for the SDGs, because Ukraine is not a part of the Economic and Social Commission of UN in the Pacific region, but the overall collaboration, our goal-orientedness, and our desire to find the best solutions for our country has provided us with the best results. And we're also really grateful to Olena Ursul, who is the head of the UNDP program on the self-governance, that also provides provided us all of the needed support while implementing all of our initiatives and actions. So, dear participants, I would like to ask you to pose your questions in the chat. So, we're going to have the Q&A session in our agenda. So, dear participants, please, when you have any questions, let us know in the chat or in the Facebook pages. If you are watching us on Facebook, we will try to cover the most questions as possible because the topic is very relevant and very important for all of us. I would like to pass the floor to our next speaker, the acting director of the Directorate for Strategic Planning and European Integration of the Ministry for Communities and Territories Development of Ukraine. Please welcome Anna Nyzhnyk. She's going to be presenting the Sustainable Development Goals in the formation and implementation of regional policies in Ukraine. So, Anna, please, the floor is yours. Yes, thank you very much. Good day, dear participants, dear colleagues. First of all, I would like to congratulate all of us at our today's meetings because definitely the questions are really relevant for us, and discussing the issues of our progress in the SDGs in Ukraine, supporting the initiatives and the claims that Ukraine has taken is a very high priority for our ministry. And one of the main priorities for us is implementing the regional policies, considering the SDGs and their overall, and the regional policies for the new programming period up till 2027 has been targeting on creating the needed conditions for the comfortable living, for self-actualization of our people, for the self-development, improving the quality of life of our people, of our citizens in every region. And thus, for the providing this initiative, in August last year, the government has approved the state strategy for the regional development up till 2027. And in May this year, we have approved the action plan as well. This is the main planning document for the implementation of the sectoral strategies for the development and for coordinating the state policies in different spheres of becoming efficient in using the state resources in territorial communities and region on the behalf of interest of person and of a community, and preserving the traditional character of historical environments. We're also dealing about the environmental care and the sustainable usage of the natural resources available, and preserving it for the future generations of Ukrainians. What I wanted to say that the new policy for the state development has been targeting as well. When we have been providing the certain planning, we wanted to cope with the certain challenges that influence the people, infrastructure, economy, environment, and the implementation of the state regional policies up till 2027 are being provided based on the complex and territorial approach. It presupposes that the subjects in the regional policies are the territories that is characterized with a certain set of economical, environmental, and other peculiarities. We have to identify as well that according to the decree of the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine in 2019, that was, I think, 886 decree, we have identified that the Ministry of the Regional Development is the one that is responsible to provide the information on the SDG 11, the sustainable development of communities and cities. So providing the development level for the territories and settlements based on the complex planning and complex management with the support of the community participation. And we might say right now that for all of the 24 regions, we have had the regional development strategies up till 2027 that have been developed based on the smart specializations, that have been as well the action plans developed to the period up till year 2023. And in this context, I would like to discuss the regional strategies more, the order of the development of those strategies strategies have been changed in 2018 by the amendment to the 932nd decree. What were the changes that covered that? The changes presuppose that the development of the regional development strategies are going to be developed based on the smart specialization. So thus, the main peculiarity of the new period is going to be the including of the strategical planning for regional development that presupposes the building of the strategies bottom up in the joint dialogue for the governance, businesses, academia, having the joint vision for the economical, scientific, business potential of the region. It first of all improves the economical growth in the region because there is the better understanding of the potential of the region. In order to support and prepare the regional strategies for the development and in order to implement it on the regional level, there have been the working groups created. The numbers of these working groups and the representatives of different stakeholders in these working groups differs from region to region. For example, in Vinnytsia region, we have more than 46 people in those working groups, and in Lviv, there's 339 people in those working groups. Overall, into the regions, in the strategic planning process, we have engaged more than 3,000 people. And of course, the biggest category has the representatives of the local administrations and regional administrations. So 1/4 of all of the members of the working groups are covered by this category. The second category is the representatives of education and academia. That's 1/6 of all of the working groups members. We've also had the representatives of the NGOs and businesses and local self-governments to participate in this organization, the territorial communities and the projects of the international technical assistance, for example, as the UNDP, as UN Women or as the U-Lead program and others. An important tool in the process of this civil discussion and the overall public discussion over the research on the development, the plan development program, it given us the opportunity to engage as the most of the people from the different territories from the region. To add up to what Tyshchuk has said, that if we will get back to the indicators itself, those indicators, the one that are responsible for the indicators that covering the informational support for is covered by the Ministry of Regional Development. I would like to say that right now, all of those indicators, if we're speaking, for example, for the 11th goals, the one is the Ministry of Regional Development, there's all of those figures are statistics. So whether we have this regional strategies, yes, we all have the regional strategies. The action plans for the implementation of the regional strategies, the stage number 1, and the action plan has been developed. The regional strategies, the second stage, that's already the implementing the plan, implementing the regional strategies. Right now, we didn't have the 100% of the achievement in that yet, but just to continue to what Tyshchuk has been saying, it's not enough. The regions do not provide enough information on their own social economical development in the regions. Yes, the Ministry of Regional Development, we have been conducting the monitoring of the social development that includes 24 indicators, but not all of the regions are providing the high quality information, are not covering all of the spheres in a complex approach. So that is why, summing up everything that I've said before, I would like to emphasize that even though the implementation of the SDGs is a very important and high priority tasks for both the Ministry of Regional Development and for the country overall, I am sure that only the complex and joint work by the representatives of the civil society, by the representatives of different bodies and different stakeholders will help us to achieve the goals targeted. The indicators, that is something that gives us the opportunity to figure out whether we are moving into the right direction, whether we should amend something, maybe we should change something and improve something on the way. And it gives us the opportunity to track the dynamics of what is the progress that we're reaching when we are moving in this direction. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Anna. And I would like to pass the floor to our next panelist, to our next guest, who has been also an active part of all of the events that have been organized by the State Statistics Service around the SDG goals. So I would like to welcome Stela Derivolcov from the UNECE to tell us on the best practices and guidelines of the SDGs monitoring at subnational level in the European region. And we're really grateful to Stela for giving us this opportunity to present the Ukrainian experience in using the UNECE methodology, for giving us the opportunity to present our experience at the 5th Assembly of the Expert Group on the SDG. So please, Stela, you're welcome. The floor is yours.
Good morning, dear colleagues. I would like just if you can confirm if you can hear me and you can see probably me well. Okay. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me to present in your meeting. And congratulations for the huge amount of work that have been done. I was thinking from the perspective of the statistical office, of Ukrainian Statistical Office, how it could be to get involved and to find the data and to find the partnerships and the stakeholders and the support in all this exercise. And it is very important that you are all together and you already set it up, because actually my presentation that I'm going to share, it is like a prerequisite, and you already are following all the conditions that, or the situations that I'm gonna try to mention. I will share my presentation. Maybe you can just inform me if it is already the presentation mode. Okay. Speaking about the structure, I have some general background and current developments, the different levels we can track the SDGs, global, national, subnational, and thematic, the challenges, of course, and some country case examples. I will not, and in the end, you will get some resources and links to the information I used. I will not cover too much on, I will not focus too much on the general information. Maybe just I would like to mention about the current developments and the fact that in 2020, the indicator list went through the comprehensive reviews and was approved by the Statistical Commission. After the update and the comprehensive review, we have Tier 1 and Tier 2 indicators, 130 Tier 1 and 90, around 90 Tier 2 indicators, 97, and some 4 indicators are from multiple tiers. It means that the different components of the indicators belong to different tiers. Speaking about the guidelines, or the, let's say, the recommendations that come with measuring and tracking the progress on SDGs, first of all, of course, we have the global level, and this is the list of 231 internationally adopted indicators. Then we come with the national indicator framework, which are decided by countries in case they would like to follow up on a more specific situation, on the national priorities, on the national conditions, and of course on the national disaggregation and population groups. Another level that would come would be the subnational one, and you just mentioned about the regional level that you are trying, you already are exercising and did the exercise to produce the data and to track the progress on, and the thematic SDG tracking indicators, meaning the specific areas, specific groups, specific locations or more focused or more zoomed locations. Speaking about the subnational SDG tracking indicators, then that would be at the region, municipality level, like NUTS 2, NUTS 3, or even lower. And speaking about the thematic indicators, then this could be on by economic activity, specific industry contribution to the SDG progress, some specific groups from population or from the other areas. About the challenges, I think throughout the presentation, I have, and my earlier speakers already mentioned, but I think you are overcoming the challenges. This is, of course, the policy integration. It is very important that the Agenda 2030 is also implemented and integrated at the regional level, because then it is much easier to follow on the regional and local priorities, which can be, of course, different in different regions. They are not just some average at the country level. Then, of course, we should mention here the resources, financial, human, technical, which are considerable in this exercise. Then the data, it is not easy to get all the data for the SDG indicators at the national level. I can imagine that getting the data for the region or for the municipality level, it is quite challenging at the same time. Then there could be the definitions in some in the legislative framework or in the policies. The definitions might not correspond to the statistical definitions, and of course in this case there should be done some, or should be invested some additional work. Another challenge could be the dissemination and the communication of indicators because of the confidentiality issues. When we zoom in into smaller geographic areas or to smaller population groups, there is a higher probability that the statistical confidentiality issues would rise up, and then we will have to deal with them. And of course, one overarching challenge that would cross all of them mentioned before would be the cooperation, partnerships, and the compromises every time we need to take. Maybe I would like a bit more to cover the country cases or the different experiences different countries adopted. And a similar maybe example to come with would be Sweden. They also decided it was developed an indicator set for the local governments, and it was a combined exercise to produce the indicators, to follow up and to produce the indicators. Statistics Sweden, and then Statistics Association, Swedish Association of Local Authorities, and the Council for Regional Analysis. Statistics Sweden was a member of advisory group, and of course they contributed with their own part with the data. But I should mention that in this case, the data were, it was not a pure like a copy of the SDG global or national indicator set. It was a supplementary set which was decided together with the local authorities. And the data that were used, it was a combination of official statistics and the data from the local authorities available at the local level. It is a plan that the indicators or the set will be updated once a year, so that to keep track of the priorities and the developments as much as possible. Another experience I would like to present and to share with you is from France. And again, it is a cooperation between INSEE France and nation and a ministry. The data presented come to support the regional department and municipal analysis. The indicators that have been selected again, it is not a copy of the national indicators, but they were selected to be as much as close as possible to the national ones. And they are presented on the seven geographic levels which are relevant for France. The difficulties that could be mentioned is, of course, to get the indicators at the sub-regional level for the indicators, to get the data at the sub-regional level for the indicators that have been selected. And the update is intended as necessary so that to keep track on the priorities and on the developments. The two other experiences I would like to share are from Poland and from Armenia, and these are actually the thematic indicator sets. The first one from Poland concerns the impact of businesses to SDG, to progress towards SDGs, and it is a very interesting initiative of Statistics Poland, academia and business sector, and the partnership and cooperation accordingly. And the set was specifically adapted to business sector so that every company, every business that would log into the impact barometer for businesses would have the opportunity to see its own contribution to Agenda 2030 in Poland. The difficulty would be to get as many, because any company can do this, but then a challenge would be to attract and to involve as many companies as possible so that there would be not just separate initiatives, but to have overall image or the overall picture for the sector. And then, of course, it is speaking about the updates. There are provided updates and revisions, but also for the future plans is to maybe to have some disaggregation by enterprise size or by other categories. And the last experience I would like to share with you today is the country experience from Armenia and the child SDG related set, because, and actually this is an idea that, a very interesting idea to come with the child SDGs indicator set to provide information on the child rights and child situation. These are 81 indicators based on 30 international corresponding to global indicators, then 4 national and 18 supplementary. The cooperation in this exercise was between Armstat, UNDP and UNICEF, who provided both UN agencies provided support, and UNICEF came with the set of SDG child-related indicators. And of course, speaking about the difficulties, again, the poor representativity of the data and the difference in the definitions, because the population taken for the exercise to be covered by the indicators is 0 to 17. However, it is according to policy documents. However, speaking about the statistical categories and statistical definitions, this is quite an unusual population group. This is why it was necessary to do some additional work and additional investments. And of course, as a follow-up, if possible, to do some more focused surveys and exercises to come with more data. All this information is also available on the links I shared on the case studies and on my last slide. And once again, congratulations. And if possible, then you are welcome to come with a case study for the wiki page. We would be happy to share it also and to share it for the other events. Thank you.
Дуже дякую, пані Стело, і також дякую
Thank you very much, Stella, and we're really grateful to you as well, because when we have evaluated our progress of using this methodology on the national level, we have also provided this information for your wiki page, and we do hope that this is going to be again promoting these good practices in those cases. And really, once again, thank you very much for very good presentation, and thank you very much for sharing with us the experience of the other countries that given us the opportunity to get an in-depth, again, analysis of the situations in our other countries as well. I will provide a couple of questions that have already been voiced out in chat, and I would like to once again tell you that all of the materials of today's presentations, all of the presentations will be sent to all of the registered participants. You have left us your email during the registration, so you will have all of those presentations available for you. The recording of today's event is going to be available both in Ukrainian and English on the official page of the Ukrainian State Service, and later on all of the materials are going to be published in the VoxUkraine page as well. I would like to now invite our next speaker, Ms. Joanne Evans, who is the head of the Statistical Office of the United Kingdom. And we would like to ask her to tell us more about the UK experience in monitoring at the subnational level the SDGs progress. So Joanne, thank you very much for your participation in our today's event, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello. Yes, I'm Joanne Evans. I'm head of the Sustainable Development Goals team. I'm going to try and share my screen now and tell you about the work we've been doing on subnational measuring of SDG statistics. Bear with me, please, and I will see if I can get that into presentation mode. Okay. Oh. So let me just go back to the beginning. You can see it all in advance. Right, can everyone hear me okay? I'm going to take that as a yes. Yeah, thank you very much. So like I said, I'm head of SDGs in the UK. What I will tell you about first of all is we've got quite a unique constitutional arrangements in the UK, in that the United Kingdom is made up of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, and different levels of responsibility over different areas of life, such as education or food or environment, are devolved to the different governments. So for implementing this agenda in England and on non-devolved areas, so topics that are not been devolved to the individual governments, we have something called outcome delivery plans, and that's the government sets the outcomes they want to achieve, and these delivery plans, how they're going to achieve them, have all been aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals. In Scotland, they have a national performance framework, and in Wales, they have a legal act, the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, that is aligned to SDGs. And in Northern Ireland, SDGs have been embedded throughout the civil service strategic plans. But the responsibility for the data for monitoring progress towards the SDGs falls to the Office for National Statistics to cover all of the UK. And so our role is to work across the government statistical service, across the 4 devolved governments, with other bodies, to coordinate and collect all of the data for the global indicator framework that we then publish, and we liaise with international agencies to make sure that we're following the right methodology and that we're validating the data that they are reporting about the UK, and we publish this data on our website. Currently we have 81% of headline indicators, but I think, as we've all said, we've heard today from others, how difficult it is sometimes to get the subnational indicators. And really, you know, local data is so important for implementing the SDGs, and so for understanding what progress is or isn't being made. But unfortunately, we only have around local data for around 70 indicators, and that's varying levels of locality. So it might be at a regional level, or it might be at a very local level. I said we publish that data on a website, and this is the website that we've developed, and it's open source and it's free to reuse. And we try to help other organizations or countries or cities to adopt this platform to report their data, because as was said early on, you know, this is about choosing the right indicators for your locale. And we have helped Bristol. So this actually, I've got this is an example here, what the website looks like. So you can interrogate your data at the indicator level, and you can see it in charts, or you can see it in maps or tables, and you can download the data. We actually did a consultation in 2017 trying to prioritize how we would source data for all of these indicators and which disaggregations were important. And geography came through strongly as the most important disaggregation. So we've done a lot of work to make sure that this website can help people understand how the data is coded to geographic locations and how they can view in maps or download regional data. And then I mentioned that the website is in use. You can see it's in use in a lot of countries and cities also. And so Bristol is a city in England that is very advanced in the work that they are doing on sustainable development goals. And we've helped them to set up their own platform to have their sort of city-specific indicators. We use them as a case study, but for other local authorities who are interested in doing this, we have extensive written guidance, we're doing some video tutorials, and we help them by identifying potential sources for local level SDG data. We also provide them with insights from our user research so that they can understand what users are looking for in terms of data. Another thing that we are developing is called a non-official protocol. And this is to help organizations understand the quality of the data. So it sort of has an assessment where we have an ethical gateway at the start to say, is this data accessible for everybody? Does it have the right ethics in place? Is it transparent? So is it free to access for people? And then we go on and we assess the relevance and methods. And this protocol will help local authorities understand that the data they're using is robust to be used for reporting. It's not as strict as following the official statistics code of practice, but it's a guide to help make sure they're using quality data. Some of the, so it's not, where, as I said, the countries have evolved, but also there's a large level of autonomy at the different cities and regional levels. So there's no one national strategy for local level monitoring of SDGs. But some examples of things that are happening is that the Local Government Association has produced a guide for councils in the UK. And then we see some cities and regions are tackling this differently. So Newcastle City Council has started a collaboration with the university in their city, and they've developed a Future Cities board that will help to build or influence the recovery from the pandemic, but in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. Liverpool are another city developing their city plan, and this is being done in collaboration with not just the council, but also with members of businesses and members of the public and academics to make sure it's representative of what the city wants for its future development. I already mentioned that Bristol has their SDG website, but they also produced a voluntary local review. I realise I haven't put a link in here, but if anyone's interested in seeing the Bristol voluntary local review, you can Google it or just ask me and I'll send a link. And we've also just put out an expression of interest. we've secured some research in the form of some resource, in the form of a university student who we've asked a select number of local authorities if they would like to be part of a pilot project where we will build a website for them and help them source SDG data over this summer. And if that turns out to be successful, it's something we'll look to repeat in future. One of the other things that we are doing as well is creating a local space, a virtual space for local authorities to come together, talk to us about SDGs, but share, more importantly, information and expertise with each other. So across the office, though, we are doing lots of things to support local data and analysis that maybe is not directly linked to the SDG program of work we have, but that will help implement the SDGs. So we've been running, it's recently finished, a pilot scheme that was aimed at supporting local authorities with their COVID response. So we provided access to national and local level data in a secure environment. So ONS has a secure research service where people who have been past security clearance can come into the office, use the computers in this area, the secure research service, to access data to do analysis on at really granular level data. And this pilot combines that service with some academics who've been funded to provide analytical support. Now, some of the local authorities have come into the secure research service and created their own local data space, allowing them to access the data linking up to national data. Some have joined with teams in other government departments like local health, Public Health England, or with other local authorities actually, to collaborate and share expertise, because not all local authorities have access to analysts with sufficient experience. And some local authorities have received direct support from the academic partners to create analysis for them. Now, the types of data they can access in this pilot exercises includes census data linked to our mortality data, which helps with disaggregations that are really key to understand inequalities in their local area. For example, ethnicity is not something recorded on our mortality data set, so we have to link to census to get that information. They also have access to the NHS test and trace data, to wastewater data, which is where samples of wastewater have been taken and tested for presence of COVID. Then the COVID infections survey, and the opinions survey, which is a monthly questionnaire that we ask about the impact of, well, we publish data monthly. I think actually we've started publishing weekly during the pandemic, but we publish information about the impact on people's lives. And then they can add their own data to this and link it up, such as footfall or pedestrian traffic. So some examples of some of the studies that they have done in this pilot is they've profiled local businesses and employment and linked that to local transmission rates so that they can identify which industries and sectors are most clustered. And then if local data is available, they can analyse changes and the magnitude of changes in key city centre and high street locations. And they can look then before, during and after the various lockdown restrictions and link that information up to transmission rates. And they've also done work about understanding the inequalities in outcomes from the pandemic and how they vary across different groups. So they've looked at demographic data, behavioural and socio-economic factors, and how they vary with outcomes. That pilot has finished now, but it will be, next steps will be decided, and the secure research service is always available, but we don't always have the academics who have paid to assist local authorities with their analysis. But we do have a subnational analysis team that is there to do to provide innovative analysis to inform subnational policy making. And they work very closely with the city and regional stakeholders to understand their needs for data. And they work together across ONS and across the government statistical service, because there are also statisticians in various government departments across the UK to deliver these requirements. They've done some work on understanding coastal towns. This is a particular issue in the UK. We see some real deprivation in some of the seaside towns that used to years ago rely perhaps on tourism. They've also done some work on understanding the changes in high streets, which is particularly pertinent now as we have seen this move to much more online purchasing and fewer people using their high streets. And as I said about us creating a space for local authorities to come together and share their experience with the Sustainable Development Goals, we're actually using the subnational analysis team to help us with that work. That is what we are doing here in the UK. To summarise, as I say, there's not an overarching strategy, but we are seeing more and more interest at the local level of cities in having their own SDG plans and SDG monitoring, particularly in light of the pandemic and the need to build back better, as they say, with that SDG lens. That's it from me. Thank you very much for having me here today. It's been really interesting listening to everyone's presentations.
Thank you very much, John. It was really indeed very fantastic and magnificent. And I'm happy to inform you that we were that much inspired by the UK experience that we also are about to start our joint initiative with UNDP to create Open SDG platform for Ukraine. So thank you very much for being with us today. And yes, for that, partnership and close cooperation, we are all in.
We look forward to welcoming you to the Open SDG community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Мікрофон, Олена Васильівна, мікрофон.
Перепрошую. А ми рухаємося далі.
Thank you, and we'll keep on moving forwards, dear participants, and I would like to invite our next panelist, so please welcome Svetlana Kovalevska, who is the head of the Center for Regional Studies for National Institute for Strategic Studies, and who also is the UNDP project consultant who has already been dealing with this topic, and we are now going to be understand what should we move in further, because we know that there has already been a lot of data and a lot of expertise achieved based on the research that already exists. So thank you very much, Svetlana, for joining us today, and you're going to be presenting a very important, relevant material for all of us. So please, Svetlana, the floor is yours. Good day, dear colleagues. Can you hear me? Okay, and you can see my presentation as well. Good. Thank you very much for your invitation. Thank you very much. You can see the title of this research and this slide. So the evaluation of the SDGs at the level of the regions of Ukraine, choosing the indicators and choosing the basic reference level. So I represent the National Institute for Strategic Research. So this is the analytic center, the think tank and the academic institution that gives some certain offers for the president of Ukraine and the Office on Security and Defense of Ukraine. And I would like to say that the SDGs is currently very important for all of the government and is a main focus for a president as well. I'm going to be the person who's finalized today's panels, and it was a great pleasure for me to learn the experience and methodology for different countries and different guests. So what is going on right now in all over the world, how the experts consider the overall SDGs progress. I wanted to outline a very interesting thing that I've noticed, that on the local level, the data are being collected and the associations of the local communities are also being very active. By the way, on Monday, on the 14th of June, the committee of the Parliament of Ukraine, the committee of the construction and self-governance, they've had also considered the document on how the association of the local self-governments association can be working. And one of the moments that can unite us is the questions of the monitoring of the local development and providing the additional monitoring for the SDGs. It can be the joining moment for all of these associations. We don't have just like one association as the SOLAS in Sweden. We have 4 associations. There are many positions for the different moments and the different issues. But I'm sure that this is a very good and perspective direction that will give us opportunity to engage the associations of the local governance and local authority and build up the collaboration between our central governmental bodies, the State Statistics Service, and other institutions to collect the best of data. And it was very interesting for us to learn the experience of the UK, because for the local self-governance, that is something that we've really lacked for us, to have these protocols and non-official protocols of the methodologies of how to identify the targets for each of the and every goal. And I think that those are the perspective research that we have to consider as well. So, I've started from the very end with basically the conclusions, because I was really eager to respond to the discussion that we've had, because I do believe that discussion that we've had today was very good. The presentations that we had very good. But let me get back to my presentation. So, the relevance of the research, we understand that into 2019, our research has only been conducted, but basically we have already heard that measuring the SDGs on the local and regional level is very important and very relevant issue for all of us. And in the overall agenda, it is very important for us to identify how the goals are going to be identified. We have had a couple of points that identified as well that the data has to be disaggregated data, and the data has to be the key data for the decision making. And this data are going to be completed by the indicators of the national and regional level that we're going to be using together with the representatives of the UNDP. We have been identifying the certain principles for the overall further on activities, and how we will be considering it at all of the level. And they're going to be effective monitorings for the systems for the monitoring and evaluation. It giving us the opportunity and the need to create the indicators, as already been said, our national indicators that are not really nicely disaggregated. So we have 21 indicator that has the very good level of the disaggregation to the subnational level. On the local level, the situation even worse, because we don't have the needed level of disaggregation of the data. And thus, we have received we have been commissioned by the UNDP so that we would be able to track out on the basic level how we can evaluate the further on progress of the reaching of the SDGs on the further on level. So why do we need these indicators? To create the strategy for reaching those goals. And they're definitely going to give us the opportunity to identify the priorities, and they can be used further on as the KPIs for the further on work. And my presentation will also be published at the site and will be provided to all of the organizers and participants. And you can see there is a link for this research. And we have identified that the main goal for us is to identify the opportunity for the calculate and provided the referential basic level. And I would like to remind you that this is year 2015, and identifying the SDGs in every region of Ukraine, considering the already identified national target goals and indicators for reaching those goals. So we have reached those basic indicators that have been already outlined by that time. You have already heard at this today presentation that some of the indicators have been changed on the global level, on the national level, and we have been using the indicators that have been relevant by that time. And so there is a very good explanation of the methodology. Then there has been we have analyzed it cause-based in the regions, and we have provided the certain conclusions and outputs based on this authors. I also wanted to say that it has been a very hard task for us because we have analyzed the two data sets for more than 4,000 indicators, and we have faced the very same problems that Tetyana has been speaking as well about. So a lot of data has been of lower quality, and basically we tried to get the average indicators for that, or we tried to omit this data from the analysis. In the result, what we have had was the analytical report that has been published in the open access right now. We have in the report, we have the overall table of indicators. It is being provided for the Excel document, and the table for the indicators region-wise. And the table of these indicators is also supported by the indicators of the national level for all of the 24 regions of Ukraine. I just wanted to say that when you open all of this indicators, all of the review, you can see all of the interlinks for the Excel table, and you can use all of those calculations to analyze the policies on the regional level. At the next slide, you can see those are the main prerequisites for the indicators and the main requirements for the indicators. So the indicators has to be corresponding to the regularity of tracking. They have to be trackable. They will have to be accessible for the data collection. Like, I'm sure there's something going on with my camera. They have to be regular and traceable. Like, if you don't mind, I will turn my camera off because I think it's slightly blinking. Svetlana, just up to you. What will be the most comfortable for you? It's okay for us. There's blinking. It doesn't really bother us. But if it bothers you and it takes your attention off the presentation, then you can also turn it off. Yes, I'm sorry for the technical problems, but basically the data have to be trackable, have to be accessible for further own processing. They have to be verified and objective. At the next slide, you can see as well that this is the different approaches to identifying the indicators. If we're speaking about the national indicators, they also have to be amended additionally because we would like to show the peculiarities for the regional disaggregation and tracking traceability of the development. But under current conditions, we were made to choose different types of alternative indicators based on the approaches that we have. You can see the approaches in this table. And as a result, comparing to the data sets of national data that we had 172, we have received all of the constantly published indicators, overall 167. The overall collection on the regional level has been done by the regional coordinators of the UNDP in collaboration with the local authorities and local administrations. And that was a very hard and complex work that has been done with that. And based on the data that we have received and results that we have received, you can see the overall aggregated information. The overall number of indicators that we have identified was 167 on the regional level. And you can see the overall comparison to the national indicators. For the evaluation and analysis of the indicators and to understand their peculiarities, you can see that there is a classification of indicators for the calculations method, those basically the relative figures and the absolute figures. And we have been trying in this case to use most of the figures and most of the indicators as relative indicators, understanding how it will be comparable for 100,000 population. And for the results, for the impact, the overall stimulators and destimulators, the higher the notion, the higher the figure is, then the better is the result, and destimulators, then the lower the result is, the better the result is. The methods of the juxtaposing of the data. So we have used the data for the horizontal comparative analysis in the framework of one indicator. So basically, if indicators in his absolute figure, we have found his absolute shift, from the overall national data. So once again, I would like to remind you, we didn't evaluate the progress of reaching the goal. We only have identified the basic comparison to the basic year, to the referent year, for us to understand the overall result of the regional development. But if we were speaking in the relevant figures, then we have evaluated it on the relative indicators as well. At this slide, you might see this additional data reflection. So we've used also the heating map, the color scale, depending on whether we've been talking about the either stimulator or destimulator. We have used the more intensive color to show up, to mark down the most important indicators. On this slide, you can see how it's all been represented in this database that is available in free access. The analysis of all of the indicators that have been identified for this regional or subnational level. So you can see the table and you can see the graph that is basically showing the very same result. What were the differences between the current year and 2015? So you can see there's so many of those. It was 17 goals according to that. To compare the data on the levels of the basics indicators, we have used the methods of the multidimensional comparisons. For each of the indicators of each of the regions, we have provided the data that was available, and starting from the minimal to the maximum meaning, and all of the information that we have received has been divided into 10 comparable directions, and we've had additional data from 1 till 10, depending on what is the overall meaning of it. Then we've had another question, because there is the number of the indicators for each goal is different, how we can balance in order to identify the right impact for each goal. So that is a question that I've had to Tetyana, and maybe we can discuss it separately, because we've had this issue of aggregating the data of how can we identify all of the indicators, whether they have the same impact for each goal's development, or some indicators are more important, so less important. So whether we have used maybe any calculations like that for this model, because we have understand that it's a very complex mathematical task for us, and it wasn't the main task for us to identify it. So we have used this approach, multidimensional approach, when we decided to compare one indicators with a certain goal. So we have used one goal for each indicator, and we have used these indicators at all of the slides. We have engaged a couple of moments to that, on whether there is impact on each of the indicators. At the next slides, you can see some of the tables as well. So how did all it worked out in the framework of one region? And you can see that's all being published in this Excel database region-wise. The presentation, we have provided you the overall outlines and outputs of our analysis. We have provided the specific impact of our analytical research. I just would like to outline a couple of the main outputs for us. We now see that there is a very important difference between the income level of the population in different regions. There is a certain differentiation on the consumptions of the nutritive products and meats. There is a huge difference in the maternity death levels and death rate, maternal mortality. There are 3 regions for Zakarpattia region, Odessa and Kherson region, where is the very complicated limited access to the professional education. There is the lower level to internet, mostly in the Western regions. There are higher risks of violence towards women if they live in the central and southern regions. And I would like to outline that's 2015 we're talking about. That there is the unequal division for the economical activities and employment for women. There is a difference in high quality of life and the health for the population in access to the drinking water. There is different indicators for water and energy density for the waste management based in different regions. The higher indicators of the productivity and effectiveness of labor that have been seen in region with the most developed industrial production. There is different indicators of innovative development that the leaders are Kharkiv and Dnipro region, and really unequal division of the object of the cultural legacy, the monuments of the national and local levels, and the objects of the natural conservation fund. So I'm just also telling you about this information just for you to outline the situation. The higher level of the criminal activities in southern regions and in Kiev, there's significant differences in how the entrepreneurs treat the judicial system. There are differences on the overall level of the direct foreign investment in different regions of countries. And you know that there are many different regions that is much lower for the regions compared to Kiev level. The bad level of development of public and private partnership in most of the regions. We don't have really good attractive public and private partnership for most of the regions. Thus, the analysis has shown us that there is a significant differentiations from region to region in 2015. It means for us that there are some of the regions that have a slightly better starting position in reaching the SDGs. And also, the analysis has proved wrong some of the stereotypes, for example, for situations in some of the regions, when situation in some of the region is automatically being scaled up for all of Ukraine, which is wrong. So that is very important for us to track it and to use this aggregated notion to very disaggregated components in order to understand the overall situation in regions. It is also important how all of the productions are influencing the Ukrainian economy. Some of the regions that show in the really good indicators of the overall energy density, or for most of the regions, the situation of this unequal disaggregation of the wealth, it doesn't really influence it that much. On the perspective of the further on research, of course, we understand that it is very important for us to develop the overall recommendations and guidelines at the level of the territorial communities. And what we have already seen, it is important to do that on the level of region as well. We have provided our own data set for these publications, and it has been provided in the report as well. As far as I've understood that we know that most of the indicators are mostly reflecting the national level of indicators. In any case, I think that these indicators should be used in one data set. It is important to use it in the overall comparisons, because basically it wouldn't be very good for us to use for the development of certain strategies. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, just give me a minute. So basically, to have the universal data set on the regional level is very important for us to provide the comparability of the data in the future. What is also important for us is to identify the data of the regional communicators. We have already spoken about that in 2010 2025 or 2030. That's going to be very important for us to identify the right identificators. We know also that there is the need for the evaluation on the regional level. It would be very good for us to provide certain methodologies that would be used by the local administration, that would be used for the development of the main goal target meanings for this target indicators. And I wanted to identify that under the invitation of UNDP in 2018. In 2018, we have conducted a certain pilot project in the target communities. And with the support of the national coordinator, we have identified the regional coordinator that have prepared the regional reports for the SDGs progress on the example of the national report as well. Those reports are available for the public access. That was a pilot project at this moment, and those regions have identified their own target goals, their own targets. They have seen what is relevant for them, what can be amended from the national plan. For example, Volyn has identified lower level of the national indicators, or other regions have provided even more. They have collaborated with the territorial communities, with the central government. They have identified those factors, those target factors, those target figures. And what is very important, that would be very interesting to know how all of those indicators were included or no. Unfortunately, this experience hasn't been scaled up to all of Ukraine. After that, we have come up with a decision that we have to provide a more unified data set that can be used. And we had engaged certain groups to develop those indicators. And you can see this 2 years have passed, and on the national level, it's finally clear for us that the regional and subnational level and the local levels are very important, especially when we're talking about the overall decentralization reform that is happening in Ukraine today. And in this case, the offers to amend the indicators of the subnational level is very relevant as well, because when we understand what kind of disaggregated indicators can be there, so we can take a step back and we can overview the national indicators as well, because we need to track out the relevance of all of these identifiers and as at the national level as well, for us to be able to use as one system. The question of development of the relevant issues for the SDGs, those are the questions for each of the regions separately, but also for the state level to consider. The final slide on the recommendation of the next steps to be taken. This is something that has already been discussed. In our opinion, there is the opportunity for us to organize the more in-depth analysis of the regional shifts for all the main indicators of the SDGs on the compared to the national level, coordinating that activities of the main statistics center for the implementation of the SDGs in the strategies of regional development, action plans, and according to the monitoring of the regional developments based on the indicators of SDG. The final thing that I would like to say, that based on the decree of the president in the issues of the 2-day seminar, they've given me the opportunity to take a look at this. Issues to be covered on the strategy for the development of the SDGs till 2030. By the way, it hasn't been identified that the strategy has to be in place, but we have to keep in mind that the monitoring has to be on all of the levels all together. So right now, there is a big problem for us is the lack of coordination between the ministries. The State Statistics Service is very progressive in this case. Yes, they've made a lot of progress and they've got the data collected on the local level. And I would like to congratulate you with your work in this direction. And I do hope that the next years you're going to be only successful in this work. And I would like to maybe answer to some of the questions that have been posed out already on the strategy. In the previous assembly of the Parliament of Ukraine, we know that there has been 2 draft laws that have been registered on the strategy of the SDGs progress. And at these assemblies, we didn't have these draft laws registered for the further consideration of the parliaments. But during the parliament hearings, we have already outlined this question again into the agenda at the very beginning of this month. We have seen another assembly registered on the issue of the sustainable development that has already been announced for the final week of this plan and before the summer vacation of the parliament. And we do hope that we'll be able to discuss the issues of how we will reach the SDGs till 2030 on the subnational level as well during that session. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for your invitation, and I hope to collaborate with you in future. Thank you, Svetlana. Thank you, Svetlana, for your great presentation. I do believe it was not just useful and not just productive and informative to learn your presentation, but it was very important for us to hear that because we know that the success is not only dependable on the result of work, but the more progressive outlines we already have, the more progressive approaches we're going to be using together in the close collaboration and partnership with one another, the more successful and the more effective we're gonna be, and the better results we're gonna have in the future. Thus, dear participants of our Zoom participants, Facebook participants, we have been really active. You can see we're really out of time already. So right now we'll have just one question to each of the panelists if we have those. We will ask our technical support to help us to still keep our webinar recorded. So we have a question to Mr. Igor Verner. So what are the documents that regulate the Ukrainian commitment to follow the SDGs, especially in the healthcare? Thank you. Dear colleagues, well, first of all, there is a decree by the President of Ukraine on the SDGs up till 2030. Then there is the decree of the government, which is 868R, that identifies the list of the indicators that are being monitored by the State Statistics Service. We're collecting the data on 183 indicators. And out of those indicators, there is also the monitoring that can be conducted on the that are belonging to goal number 3. How did we get those indicators there? There has been a lot of work that has been conducted by many parties, the civil society, the academic groups that has been curated by the Ministry of Healthcare of Ukraine. They all has provided the national indicators. Then we had provided the overall amendment to the subnational level, and up to 102 indicators, we have conducted all 17 goals, 186 tasks, and 183 indicators. And based on those indicators, we are now collecting and monitoring data and monitoring the results of the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm just wanted to save us the time. You can find all of these documents very easily in the internet, and I just really wanted to provide the opportunity for the other participants to answer the questions as well. Thank you. Thank you, Ihor. And I would like to add up once again. So, dear participants, speaking about the sustainable goals, especially in healthcare, please, you can always track our YouTube or Facebook pages, and you can take a look at those 4 webinars that we have had together in partnership with VoxUkraine, and that we have had together with VoxUkraine, and we have had this pilot once again that give us the opportunity to know that this methodology can be used at all of the levels for each of the goals. And we have had this pilot for using these national indicators. We've had those results that with the use of the global indicators, we also have the good results, and sometimes even with better results than on the national level as well. So maybe that would be even good for us to consider the issue of adding certain identification to those that we already have in Ukraine. Another question, Tetyana Tymchuk, can you show us the results for Zhytomyr region for the methodology, or will it be too long? Well, I could show it to you, but I think that it will take a lot of time. So, okay, so maybe you're going to be searching for that. I will provide the question to the next speaker. Yes, like, okay, we have it. So will you have any comments? No, this Zhytomyr region is the lowest line. Yeah, I will just maybe, I'll just send it to the person requesting it. And basically we already have, I just didn't use it here, that we have a very big matrix that identifies all of the identifiers, so you can take a look at this in more detailed way. Should we keep moving forward? Yes, okay, thank you. So let's keep on moving further on, if we may.
I will switch to English and ask the question to our distinguished international panelists. Dear Stela, dear Joanne, could you please prompt us in what way can civil society organizations get involved into the process of SDG monitoring at local level? Any pieces of advice?
I'm sorry, Olena, can you please repeat? I did not hear.
Yes, sure. In what way can civil society organizations get involved into the process of monitoring of SDGs achievement at local level? Any hints?
There are many ways, and all of them, I would say, are innovative. And probably when saying about the innovative, I would say about going beyond the traditional ways to make partnerships, the traditional ways to do the job. And then it means, of course, the involvement of the statistical service, of the civil society. It means the openness of both partners in seeing the advantages of one another and to support in overcoming the disadvantages. Like, for example, in the case there are some data sources available in the civil society, in some projects, some citizen-generated data, and Joanne maybe can come with more exact cases from her experience. Then it is, of course, this is a lot of information and there are many data that can be used. At the same time, even if there is a lot of there are a lot of data, not always they are suitable for statistical purposes and according statistical definitions and concepts and classifications. And in this case, there is a huge work that have to be done. And there are many cases, like, for example, when citizen generated data or data from some project or data collected through applications, they could be used, but then there is work from both sides. So yes, civil society can be involved in monitoring SDGs, in particular at the local level, because this is really the acting and the zoom in focus on the action and on the issue maybe, but this is the openness from both sides and the partnerships.
Thank you, dear Stela. Dear John, anything to add, please? Your ideas, welcome.
Yes, I think civil society organizations are crucial for local work on the SDGs, because they vary, we think civil society organizations, sometimes we think big, the big names that we know about, but there are lots of smaller organizations that operate on very specific issues. And it's about engaging, as Stella said, with the local authorities and about building up those partnerships. And if Stella kindly posted in the chat the link to the Bristol Voluntary Local Review, you'll see there a case study of how they've brought together civil society organisations with the university and with the council to identify what are priorities for that area. And absolutely, in terms of using citizen-generated data or data from a civil society organisation, that's why we're developing the non-official protocol. But one thing we have done is we have published data from civil society organisations as adding context in official articles from ONS. So, for example, we published an article looking at domestic violence, and we use data from an organisation called Women's Aid. And the key to that, for us to use that, was we were completely transparent about how that data had been collected, about where the flaws were in that data collection. So obviously it wasn't a representative sample, but we were very clear on what data we had received and what that showed. And we used that as context to just add a fuller picture to the official statistics.
Thank you very much.
And there is the question to Svetlana as well. On the indicators and the level of achievements should be available to the members of the local councils and local governments for them to be able to track it for their own goals planning. So do you plan to conduct the work with the deputies on the level of the amalgamated communities? If yes, then in what formats? Yes, thank you very much. I've already started to answer in our chat on this question. So yes, I do support this idea that the locals of governance and the amalgamated communities, they have to be aware of it. They have to understand what the Agenda 2030 is. They have to understand that the SDGs can be the united framework for different levels of the administrative and territorial level and different level of communities. I have provided in the chat the links to the community, the links to those analytical notes that provide some recommendations, and there are the recommendations for the local self-governments as well as the recommendations for the national governance. For example, providing the online course for the public officers on the issues of the strategical planning, to provide some changes and amendments for some of the regulatory documents that have been already outlined by the representatives of the ministers, on providing the smart specializations that would consider the certain indicators of the sustainable development as well. So there are many different offers, and in the framework of our authorities and mandate, we can provide the expert support of this process as well. Thank you very much. And Anna is right now had to leave us, but there was a question to Anna as well of how to improve the progress of how to provide the progress for the SDGs, and she has answered in Facebook that on the level of the region, the SDG progress depends on the activities of the region itself. We provide the methodological support on developing the regional strategies that have to improve the actions to reach the SDGs, but the work itself to reach the SDGs is the responsibility of every region. Thus, having that said, dear participants, our time is out already. I'm really grateful on behalf of the organizers. I'm really grateful to all of our panelists and all of the participants. Thank you very much for very active participation and vivid discussion. I do hope that it is the right way when we are having all of the stakeholders involved, and this is the only way for us to keep on moving further on. We can only be working together in synergy. So thank you very much to all of you. We do hope that it is just the very beginning of all of the good deeds that we still have to do together in close partnership and close cooperation. And I would like to outline that we've had more than 300 people register for today's event, which gives us the understanding that the topic is very relevant. And the need to pay even more attention to that and pay even more attention into this direction. And it also gave us the understanding that there is the interest and active participation and active readiness to participate in these issues. There is the certain readiness to join the changes that are happening and to be participating in all of this resulting work. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Be safe and see you soon. Goodbye.